friends. Welcome to the Mobile Monger Podcast, where we go behind the scenes in the cheese world to chat with the people making, selling, or distributing your favorite specialty food products. I'm your host, Janae Muha, certified cheese professional, longtime cheesemonger, and producer advocate. Oregon has been in the foodie spotlight for the past 2 decades for good reason. Situated in a fertile valley that produces some of the best ingredients, farm to table was a reality before it was used as a marketing talking point. From wine and beer to the plumpest berries, Oregon and the surrounding Pacific Northwest competes at the highest levels on stages the world over. Of course, the cheese being made in Oregon has also received some of the highest accolades there is. With only around 22 creameries representing the entire state, the Oregon Cheese Guild has situated itself as an industry leader in its support of those hardworking cheesemakers. Katie Bray was the first hired executive director of the Oregon Cheese Guild, and she has taken the already strong base and ran with it. With Oregon being the backdrop of this year's American Cheese Society conference, I talk with Katie about what experience has served her best in this role and what we can look forward to at conference.
My name is Katie Bray, and I am the executive director of the Oregon Cheese Guild, where I started in 2015. I don't know how far back do you want to go on the path to cheese?
We have all the time in the world.
It's surprisingly linear, my path to cheese. So probably started in college. I was a business major at the University of Washington, and had an interest in international studies in business, and had been a longtime Francophile, and was doing an internship at the French American Chamber of Commerce up in Seattle, which after college led to a job working for the Economic Development Office for the state of Washington. So I had moved to Paris after college, planned on teaching English for a year and coming home, and then ended up getting this other opportunity over there and stayed for 5, and had the opportunity to work with Northwest companies who were looking at expanding business into Europe for whatever reason. And we're so lucky here in the Pacific Northwest to have an abundance of different industries that I got to get involved with. So everything from, wine to aerospace to other food and beverage, forestry, all different kinds of things. Got exposure to those, and came back in 2002 to the United States, and took some more time up in Seattle. I was working for a nonprofit at the time that was called Washington State International Trade Fair, that organized Washington State and Pacific Northwest pavilions at international trade shows. So we helped coordinate lots of different small and medium-sized companies who got to be under the umbrella of either the state of Washington or the Pacific Northwest, and gave me exposure to a lot of different things. And the last thing that we did, the last event that we did, was a wine event promotion of Pacific Northwest wines up in Vancouver, BC. And I got to be friends with the folks who run the Oregon Wine Board at the time. And I am originally from Portland, Oregon, grew up here. I'm back here now. And when that activity ended, the nonprofit that I was working for unfortunately lost their state funding. And so it had to close its doors. I moved back home with my parents and was talking to a lot of different organizations and entities here in Portland. And they had some opportunities there at the Oregon Wine Board. And so I went to work there in 2004 and was there through 2012. So that was a pretty long stint. And that's where I really cut my teeth in. I'd been doing kind of these nonprofit or partial quasi-governmental organizations that did collaborative marketing for Pacific Northwest based companies in lots of different industries. And so that's where I really got to specialize in one industry in particular, and loved food and beverage. I did the international marketing program. They benefit from some federal dollars that are meant to promote Pacific Northwest products, food and beverage products overseas. And so I ran that program with my experience I had from living overseas. And then they also, then I morphed into a role where I organized our industry convention, which is actually a similar size to ACS conference. And so organizing those educational programs, running a trade show, doing all the things that fall under an industry facing conference here at the Oregon Convention Center for about 1,500 people. So that was the last role. Oh, actually, no, there was one more in between. And then from there, I went for a year to a boutique PR agency specializing in food and beverage, and was able to run the wine program there. So did a couple of different initiatives there. And then I already had a 3-year-old and got pregnant with twins. And then when they were about ready to come into the world, I took a full year off of working just to focus on that and be a mom for a year. And so when I was ready to come back again, I knew I wanted to be in the food and beverage world, loved marketing. I saw this opportunity pop up to be the first ever staff person for the Oregon Cheese Guild. And it was like the light bulb went off, the resonating sounds went off in my heart. And I knew this was the job for me, and put together a interesting presentation for the hiring committee. And I think the rest is history. So that was in 2015 that I started with the Guild.
And here you are, 2022, still at the helm at the Guild.
It's been a wild roller coaster ride for sure. I mean, who could have predicted? But what they had me do was put together a strategic plan for some of the things that I wanted to do at the Guild. And it's been great because I do feel like many of those things we have accomplished, and we've been able to develop. I've been able to develop some new skill sets through the pandemic, things I never thought I would be doing. And I always feel like there's still more to do. So, even though it's been 7 years, I feel like we've accomplished a lot, but there's still a lot left to do, which is really exciting.
So let's get into the nitty gritty of the Oregon Cheese Guild. What is the Cheese Guild's role in Oregon cheese, and what do you do in that role?
So I think with any of these collaborative marketing organizations, the goal is to promote a category. I had a former boss who used to say, increase the desirability of the category that you're working for. So it's primarily a marketing organization. And I would say that most of our activities are aimed at just elevating the entire perception, acceptance of, and desirability of Oregon cheese, but we also do have an educational component as well. And so we run an industry event called Cheesemaker Education Day. That's an industry inward facing educational event, but most of what we do is consumer facing or kind of B2B marketing for our varying between 20 and 22 cheesemakers. We've been at about that number since I've been here.
And then you host a couple of events every year also?
We do, and I would say that's our primary activity, is the 2 consumer-facing events that we do. So one is called the Oregon Cheese Festival. It was founded by David Gremmels at Road Creamery in Southern Oregon, and several years back before I came along, he gifted that event to the Guild, and it is by by far our number one revenue generator, and attracts the most people. At the peak right before the pandemic, I believe the last one we did had about 4,500 people. It's a pretty sizable event over 2 days. And then the other consumer facing one we do is called the Wedge. It takes place in Portland in the fall, and it's just a 1 day. At its peak, we got about 2,500 people, and both are billed as a celebration of cheese and everything that goes with it. So we have, our core, at our core, we're trying to promote Oregon cheesemakers, but we do invite any cheesemakers who want to participate from out of state are welcome to do so as well. And then all of the things that go with it. So, beverage, food, beer, wine, cider, spirits, kombucha, NA, all the beverage categories. And then, charcuterie, chocolate, jams, jellies, hot sauce, crackers, all the things.
All the side hustle, great with cheese things. Yes, absolutely. So some places don't necessarily have a guild, or they are building a guild. What would you say is the best thing about the Oregon Cheese Guild? I feel like at its point now is in a really good spot in terms of a more well-known guild. Vermont, obviously, I think that their guild is kind of like the primo, in my mind anyway. Tell me if I'm wrong. But what would you suggest to people who are thinking about starting a guild? Or I guess California's guild is also really, really prominent. But
Anthea, so she was there first. Anthea Stoltz was their first ever staff person, and she was hired within weeks of when I was hired. So we got to kind of come up in that role of staffing a guild together for the first time. Whereas I think Vermont has had a staff person running their guild for many years before even Anthea and I came on. So they got a huge head start, and they're highly operational, highly functional, well organized. Marty Mundy now is doing an awesome job over there, and they just have a lot of makers. I mean, they're small, but they have a lot of makers. That's one of the things that's been a challenge for Oregon, is while many of them are well known, and in the case of Tillamook, obviously large and have a lot of resources at their disposal. They're just the sheer numbers. I lost my train of thought for a second, but they're the kinds of opportunities that a guild can provide when you have more cohesion amongst your members. If you're of a similar size, a lot of them are like goat producers or goat's milk producers. You can streamline your activities a little more, where it might be kind of harder. Like in the case of Oregon, our numbers are so small, and then of those, we only have 4 members who are producing above, I can't remember the exact statistic, but we did a survey several years back, and I want to say it was between 100,000 and 350,000 pounds of cheese per year. Does that sound right? I'd have to look at the stats, but it was just we had 4 who were above a threshold, and then there was a huge gap, and everybody else, our other 18, were below it. So the kinds of activities that you might do as a guild would be very different if all of your members looked like the top 4, or if all of the smallest ones were in a position to be able to do a lot of extra activities. So that's been one of the challenges over the years, is figuring out activities that we can do that are doable, that are able to be taken advantage of by the greatest number of our members. Did I totally go off away from your question?
No.
I completely veered away.
I didn't even really form a real question, but that was definitely kind of what I was getting at, of what does a guild provide for the cheesemakers? And I think that is a key piece that even in Washington, we deal with that a lot too, because we have beachers, obviously, but we also have all of these really tiny cheesemakers that how do we accommodate all of the in-betweens too? So.
And I did a survey couple years back, talking about our different programs and asked people to rank those in terms of value to them. And it was pretty funny because I think I had like 15 different things that were listed. And I did a bar graph and presented it at our Cheesemaker Education Day. And it was like, they were all like within here, and you kind of hope when you do something like that some of them rise to the top and other ones like, okay, maybe we don't need to put effort into those. But it turned out that like 7 or 8 people were interested and finding benefit from all the things. So, you just keep trying to do things that make sense, so our consumer facing events that can make sense for everybody from a teeny tiny, micro creamery to someone like Tillamook who comes, they bring their best, they give out tons of samples. They don't try to sell anything. They're not taking away from anybody else. They're just there to, help lift up the rest of the group. And we're just, we're so lucky to have supporters like that. And they play so nicely together. And one of the things I'm super blessed with on, kind of this collaborative marketing side is there really isn't a lot of competition. There's such diversity amongst our makers that, what's good for everybody. I always say the rising tide lifts all boats. And that's especially true here in Oregon. And a lot of the people who've gone on to start, some of the smaller creameries started at the bigger ones and they move and help each other out. And I mean, there's just really such a spirit of collaboration that's beautiful and makes it very rewarding to do what I do.
Yeah. Oregon's cheesemakers are some of the best. I mean, as an Oregonian, I can say that, even though I live in Washington now, but I also think the Washington cheesemakers are Pacific Northwest. I'll just throw it out there. Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. And there's a lot of collaboration, I would say, between the two states. While there are several reasons that it maybe doesn't quite make sense to merge guilds, there's so much cooperation. And now Courtney Johnson's just doing such an awesome job up there, and have really enjoyed working with her and her kind of bringing the activity level of that guild and the visibility of Washington's cheesemakers up. There are so many ways it makes sense for us to work together. And I know that, kind of just operationally, I guess I could speak maybe more from a guild standpoint. It was really fortuitous to be able to come into this role with 2 existing events that had some traction. And obviously the one that takes place at Rogue Creamery, for many years after I came on board, we continued to have it there on their property, which is just a massive, freebie and a benefit. And, I shouldn't call it a freebie because it wasn't free to them, but, a big donation of time and space and sacrifice on their part that allowed the guild to, get a foothold and thrive. And I know up in Washington that it was an independent event that was acting as kind of their industry chance to do consumer outreach and sales. So that's kind of one big difference. I lucked out with that and relish the opportunity to create more partnerships. We're actually just talking about it with an event called the Meat and Cheese Festival, about ways that we can do collaborative seminars during that festival. And I'll travel up there to do an Oregon piece during one of these seminars up there. And Courtney's going to come down here and do it when they come to Portland in the fall. So,
well, I also think that too, that now that ACS has like a guild, like you guys meet pretty regularly to chat about stuff. So I didn't know if anything was popping up in there that's like interesting to hear from other guilds, like how they're doing things.
That is an interesting point that you bring up. And that was really something that was born out of the early days of the pandemic, when a lot of the really small cheesemakers, especially, who had been selling a lot to restaurants, other places where they, package cheese in bulk, and all of a sudden the only show in town is retail, and had to figure out, how to pivot in many different ways. A group at ACS thought it would be beneficial for these regional people to start coming together as kind of sharing what are the issues that everybody's facing in different parts of the country, because they're probably pretty similar, but people were independently coming up with really interesting solutions to a lot of these problems, and just being able to share resources and ideas in that way without ever feeling like we were being competitive or giving away our secrets. If anything, like other than my 4 biggest cheesemakers, the rest of them, there are very few that sell out of state. And if they do, it's maybe to Seattle or maybe to a specialty shop in Chicago or New York, but they're not like a grocery store brand that you're going to find countrywide. And the same is true, I think, of our very smallest producers in California, in Vermont, in, even places like Texas or Pennsylvania. And to just be able to come together and say, hey, we went to our state legislature and did this, or like the Victory Cheese program was so interesting too. Or, in Washington, they went to a bunch of their retail partners and their distributor partners and said, hey, can everybody knock down their margin by a couple percent so that we can still keep paying these cheesemakers full value, and you can move some of this product a little faster through these retail channels. And just being able to share those kinds of ideas on a nationwide level was amazing. And a lot of things came out of that. And it's funny, I was just on the board, the ACS board planning call for some of these committee presentations that are going to be happening during conference. And one of this what's called the Guild Network Outreach Committee. I can't remember what the exact name is, something like that. Guild Network Outreach, I think, is a subcommittee of marketing. But we were talking about the presentation and how that really morphed from like, what can we do to help small cheesemakers right now? Kind of just like a venting, kind of like therapy, like group therapy for the guilds around the country, into a group that has structure. We sent out surveys and asked people, what are the topics that you are most interested in as a guild? We prioritized them. We set up a regular schedule of these Zoom meetings. We started bringing in outside experts on some of these areas, and we've had really well-organized, robust discussions and sharing around things like, member levels, pricing levels, and benefits, and what you get for that. What do consumer events look like post-pandemic? How to write a job description for and hire an executive director. How to set up an education day. This last one was kind of a forum on what do you do for member education, and it was really different. Like Vermont's gotten a lot of traction with their virtual conference, which is great. I love having our in-person conference, and had some things about that. Courtney's been doing more of like these one-off types of webinars and things in partnership with other groups, and just that kind of sharing that we're able to do together has been really wonderful. And I hope that we are, in that rising tide spirit, like elevating the way that the guilds and these groups can operate for all American cheesemakers.
I love it. It's been one of my favorite things about what's been happening lately, because the fact of the matter is that one of the best parts about traveling is getting to try new cheeses in every place that you go that you can't get anywhere else. And I'm so excited for people to come to ACS and get to enjoy all of the cheeses that I have been loving not my entire life, because most of these cheesemakers have not been making cheese since 1977, but for many years, these are the cheeses that I love and adore and have been selling for years and years and years. So I'm so excited to share them with people. And, that's the fun of having guilds that can support these cheesemakers and getting their names out there a little bit more.
100%. And getting to taste, one of the greatest things about conference too is getting to taste a lot of those, maybe not teeny tiny, but like the mid-sized ones that are sold mostly regionally in other parts of the country, to finally get them. And the actual cheesemakers, they call it Meet the Cheesemaker for a reason. It's really an amazing experience to have all of those people and those stories in one room together. And we're just so looking forward to having that be taking place here for the first time since 2006.
I know, it's pretty wild. I was working at the downtown Whole Foods when ACS was in Portland the last time, and I didn't go to ACS then. But I didn't really have to because everybody kind of came into that store anyway, because it was like it was the only Whole Foods at the time.
Right.
And we had a very impressive cheese case. So I just remember one day looking up while I was cutting cheese, and the entire cheese case was surrounded by people, like probably a good 100 people. And I felt like I was in a fishbowl of like, everybody's staring at me as I'm cutting cheese, and they're just like having their tour, doing their thing. And I was like, okay,
that's great.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of professionals. I mean, they're like rock stars, right? Within the industry. You're like, oh, look,
yeah, I had no idea at the time. I was still kind of new-ish in cheese, and the early 2000s were a very different time in cheese. Like, just the access to information was very limited. And now we do have this boon of like, you can look pretty much anything up at any given point in time and find out information about it, which is amazing and wonderful.
And in that time, really, I mean, from what I understand, I wasn't a member or part of the industry yet, but ACS really came into its own during that time as well. And with the hiring of Nora and those years of building up conference from, I think, something pretty small to what it really is now, healthy, robust. Yeah.
And I think that just the American cheese renaissance, if you will, or the beginnings of what we are in now, that's kind of, when it started. I remember getting cheeses from like Jasper Hill and getting like the stuff that they don't even make anymore. But like, I just remember having all of these cheeses back then and being like, wow, this stuff is so weird, like wonderful. And now they're like, Jasper is a huge company in our world, yeah. And they're not a huge company, but in the eyes of our world, they are definitely, some of the more prominent names. So we've watched that grow. It's pretty amazing.
It's a phenomenal community to get to know and now be a part of. And I still, it's funny, I've been here, 7 years. I still feel new to the industry, and I don't know when that's going to wear off, but I learn things every day, and I'm not a cheese person by trade. I'm a marketing person. So there's so much still to learn, and I'm so thankful for people like you who've been in the industry for so long, because your stories are incredible, and the way that people who are true cheese professionals can talk about cheese in general, but the brands they love and the reasons why and the history with it and their personal connection to it, I think is just a really impressive.
Well, I'm 20 years in and I still feel like I'm new, so it's okay. That's the joy. That's one of the things that's kept me in this industry for so long, is that I never feel like I know what I'm doing. And that just keeps me on my toes at all times. So.
And there's new stuff happening all the time, new products being created, new companies starting up.
And it's all delicious. So that makes it even better.
Does make it even better.
So we have ACS coming up soon. What is the guild working on in terms of ACS?
Well, so in addition to being on the conference planning committee, where I'm really just trying to help wherever I can, in terms of helping find locations for different events and things happening in the cheese crawl and getting people plugged in and connected to different aspects. I personally I submitted and got accepted a seminar called What Grows Together Goes Together, and used some of my connections in the wine world to get, there's the CEO and founder of Willamette Valley Vineyards, his name is Jim Bruneau, is coming, along with a geology professor from Portland State University who focuses in terroir and has done a lot of work on terroir as it relates to wine, and many other industries. So he's going to come and talk about some of the geological history of Oregon. There's a phenomenon called the Missoula floods, was a great ice dam up in Montana that broke loose 10,000 years ago, and giant walls of water came rushing out through Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, and out into the Willamette Valley, and kind of created the topography of what it is today, and has informed a lot of the things that grow together, whether that's on the hillsides that, come up out of the valley floor where a lot of the wine grapes are grown, or the valley floor where there's the, beautiful grass for cows grazing and all the things, or, like some of the other accompaniments, like we talked about for the wedge, jams, jellies, charcuterie, honey, some of the fruits that are grown. And so there's a trio of wine, cheese, accompaniment from 4 different regions. So that's a tasting session, and it's a little bit of geology history and then a little bit of tasting. And I'm super excited about that seminar. It's going to be awesome.
That sounds really cool.
Get in line early for that one. And then what else? The Oregon Trail one, I haven't been as instrumental in that. I sort of helped the woman who is the lead on that seminar at the Oregon Dairy and Nutrition Council kind of conceptualize and think about what that might look like. And then she submitted the proposal, and it was so exciting about the Oregon Trail and how that combination of the Native people who were here at the time melded with what the wagon train folks brought over on the Oregon Trail, and how that has led to what the food scene is today. So that's an informational and tasting session that they were so excited about that they made the welcome breakfast. So everybody gets to participate in that one. That's super exciting. I've been working on setting the pre-conference tours, and I think they're filling up fast. So if anybody is actually listening to this and that's something that you would want to do, I would encourage you to sign up now. One is heading down to the Salem area and going to a small farm and cheesemaker down that direction called TMK. And they've got a beautiful facility where they've got cows, they're making cheese, curds, and they're also making vodka out of their whey, which is a pretty exciting program. From there, they go to the new Ochoa's facility down in Salem, which is beautiful. There are windows onto the cheesemake facility where you can watch them stretching the curd for their amazing Oaxaca. They've got delicious quesadillas and fried curds and ice cream and all the things there. So that's going to be a fun stop. And then they go on to Willamette Valley Vineyards for a vineyard tour and wine tasting. So that's Salem. We're also doing one in more of the kind of Southwest, traditionally what you think of as wine country here around Portland, little town called Dundee. And visiting Briar Rose Creamery is right in the heart of Oregon's Willamette Valley's, heart of our wine country. And then actually visiting a brewery that's out there called Wolves and People, where you have lunch, and then visiting another winery in the afternoon. And that's TBD. That's one of the things I'm still working on. We had one and then it didn't work out for a couple of reasons. But that's going to be a beautiful day out in wine country. And then the third tour is right here in Portland, which is really exciting because we've got Olympia Provisions, which though they don't make cheese, they are such a close partner in everything that we do. Eli and team are always at ACS. I'm sure many of you out there have met them before, and they have an incredible facility right not far from the conference center. We're starting the day there and then heading up to one of the Murray's flagship stops we call it Fred Meyer here. It's kind of our local local Kroger partner. And so spending some time there and learning about their cave aging program. So that should be really interesting, and doing the lunch there, and then going to visit a couple different independent shops here locally, one called Zupans and the other called Elephant's Delicatessen. And they both have lovely cut and wrap programs and are big supporters of local cheese. And they can talk about their programs there and then how they integrate and work with us at the Guild to help promote some local cheeses. Pre-conference tours, seminars, the best I haven't talked about. So I was very inspired several years back. My very first conference was the first one that was in Des Moines in 20 Was that 16? I think it
Yeah,
was
I believe
maybe
so.
16. And the first night we got there, they bussed us all out to Maytag.
One
It
of my
was
favorite nights ever at conference. That night was so fun.
well, tell me what you remember from it.
That well, Maytag wasn't currently making cheese at the time, but all of their people cooked food for us, and we just got to sit out on the farm, and the sun was setting, and it was just beautiful. And then there was like a dunk tank, and we had Dunk the Cheesemaker, which was so funny and so much fun. And I don't know, it was just like the cornfields and the sunset and the Dunk the
Yes.
Cheesemaker, and the food was really
And
good.
the bluegrass band, they had like a bluegrass band playing, picnic blankets all over the place, these rolling golden hills at sunset.
It was very idyllic and I loved it.
Corn themed menu, corn themed cocktails. It was just like, oh, this is Iowa. This is just magical. And I have to admit, I, medium to low expectations about what Des Moines was going to be like. And it was just like, and I felt like the rest of conference just kind of led from there. And so I said, if it ever comes to Portland, we have to create the quintessential Portland/Oregon event for all these folks who might be in town for 4 or 5 days. They're going to have to fly in right at the beginning, fly out at the end. They're not going to get a chance to experience all of the amazing things about our city. So we're going to do our best to bring as many of them to one place and one time at a conference. It's an offsite. We're calling it the Best of Oregon. It is happening on Friday night, immediately following Meet the Cheesemaker. And since people will be coming for Meet the Cheesemaker, where they get to try everybody's cheese in kind of its original form, all of the bites that we're going to have at the event are something that incorporates cheese into something else. And wherever possible, that something else is also something else that comes from Oregon. So whether that's, fresh berries or salmon or mint or Carlton Farms pork or all the partners that you can imagine, we are working on bringing together for these brand inspired bites that take the cheese to the next step. And we're calling it the Best of Oregon. And in addition, we're going to bring in some iconic Portland entertainment and fun things to be kind of punctuating the event with as well. Plus dance floor, DJ. We're working with all of our beverage groups. So the Northwest Cider Association, the Oregon Wine Board, the Oregon Brewers Guild are all bringing in a huge array of samples of all different types of their products so that people can just taste a whole bunch of different things, get exposure to a lot of stuff. We've got a water kefir probiotic sparkling beverage from Oregon that's going to be there. We'll have non-alcoholic options as well. Entertainment, dancing, photo booth, but the bites are going to be awesome. I can give you a little sneak peek. One of them, I know that Rogue Creamery is bringing up a chef from Southern Oregon who does a blue cheese curry donut. Rock is doing a fried cheese curd poutine that they're doing in partnership with New Seasons, which is our local chain specialty grocer. There's going to be some pairings. There will be some sweet things. There's a really cool flatbread pizza that we're doing with a Portland Creamery smoked chev using Mama Lil's peppers, which is one of kind of our micro brands, and arugula and pancetta. And it's a beautiful time of year for produce, stuff with berries, peaches, all the things.
It's a great time of year in terms of just the foods of the Pacific Northwest are just popping at that time. So that's so exciting.
There may be a mobile tattoo parlor doing some, they'll be small, but you might be able to go get a little permanent remembrance of your time in Oregon.
That is very Portland. Yes. I mean, I've been in conversations with people about getting tattoos in Portland. So there's that.
I thought that might be a thing for the cheese community. I have to admit, I actually don't have one. And I I part of me is, this might be the time. This might be the moment. I'm almost 50. I think I'm ready to get a tattoo.
Sure. Why not? Why not? Anytime's a good time, I think, but I have a few. And then also I'm sure that Oregon cheesemakers will be well represented at Meet the Cheesemaker too.
I've been really encouraging them to sign up for that. Like I said, we don't have a lot who are very big, but I know there'll at least be 7 or 8 there. So we'll get some representation there too.
Yeah. And I know Courtney is representing a few different brands from Washington down there too. So there'll be lots of Pacific Northwest stuff that you can't get anywhere else at Meet the Cheesemaker, which is super exciting. Right. So with all of that, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you do for the Guild or that the Guild does that you really feel like people should know about?
I don't know. There are a whole bunch of smaller things. I mean, obviously the 2 big consumer facing events are huge, but there's a lot of work that we've done to partner with our retail partners and distributors here to get those 2 audiences on board. When I first started, it was really, and it still is, I mean, it's primarily a cheesemaker focused organization, unlike ACS, which has a huge, retailer and distributor and other industry people component to it. But I really wanted to bring those communities in. And one of the cool things that we've done is start an Oregon Cheese Month, which happens in September. So we encourage all of our makers to work with those retail partners and distributors to do all kinds of promotions on Oregon cheese. And pre-pandemic, we had a really robust demo program where we were able to get some funding through a few different sources. For a few years, it was through a federal grant. Sometimes it's been more through those partners or other fundraising efforts where we do a huge demo program. So each product demonstration would be like 3 different Oregon cheeses from different brands. And in theory, those cheeses are on sale or on special or being promoted or have end caps or have special displays all throughout that month. And then to help that effort along, a couple of years back, we created an Oregon cheese sticker and paper program. So we get chromatic and paper printed with the Oregon Cheese Guild logo. We have stickers for if they want to use their own wrapping so that at least you see the little Oregon cheese, or you can stick it on a prepackaged, cryo wrap piece so that, and then we create posters, send them out to all our retail partners. So you walk in the store, it says, it's Oregon Cheese Month. Look for the, Oregon Cheese Guild symbol in your case to help support local products. And then they look down at the case and it's all, stickered up using the paper. So that's been a really exciting program that several of our partners have found so effective in moving the needle on local cheese that they have asked to be supplied with those, with the cheese paper and the stickers year round. And so we support those programs as well. Obviously kind of the typical Guild stuff like maintaining the website, keeping it updated. We have printed a map for the cheesemakers that are open to the public or have spaces that are open to the public. And because there are so few, we only have 22 members, and of those, there are maybe like 6 that don't have any type of visitation or shop opportunity. So we expanded it. I wanted there to be, if you get 2 or 3 food destinations in a place like Bandon, where Face Rock Creamery is, then all of a sudden it's a lot more enticing for someone to make a trip out there if they're a food interested person. And so the idea was to kind of find little mini clusters around our cheesemakers of other delicious food items. And so we created an Oregon cheese and food trail map. What else?
That must have been really terrible research for you to do.
I haven't been everywhere yet, but I've almost been everywhere. No. Yeah. It's a fun excuse to make a road trip for sure.
Yeah. And eat some delicious food.
That community, I mean, it's just been amazing since I started. We got the kind of the typical Olympia Provisions, Kelly's Jelly, Jacobson Salt. We've got a few iconic brands here. locally that made sense to include. They're the same ones who come to the wedge and they end up on the map and all the things. But that list now is, like 1,000 food companies long, and we're constantly updating it because obviously COVID was difficult for a lot of small food producers. But it's just amazing how much excitement and productivity there is around the food and beverage scene here in Oregon. There's so much happening. The same true in Washington. It's delicious.
We've got good stuff. And I'm excited that other people get to finally come and experience it. So, okay. Last 3 questions. These are kind of like quick round questions.
Oh boy.
First one, what is your current cheese crush?
My current cheese crush is the bite that will be served at our event, the one that I was just talking about earlier. So at last year's, last year we had the last 2 years we had to take our events virtual. And so over the course of the 2 years, we produced 4 virtual tasting events where we assembled a kit of like 13 to 15 cheeses and 4 accompaniments. And we did one that was exclusively Southern Oregon pickup, that was to replace the festival. It wasn't exclusively Southern Oregon items. It was all Oregon, but we had a local TV celebrity down there who is very food interested. She and David Gremmels went and created this flatbread idea where they spread, at that time it was a By George spreadable fromage blanc and arugula, and I think they had prosciutto and maybe some spicy jelly and sea salt, and I just thought, ooh, I know exactly what I want to do. So there's a proprietary flavor of Portland Creamery Chev that was created as a contest between the different New Seasons stores. I think there are 17 or 18 of them now. And the store where I shop, the Slabtown New Seasons, shout out to Sonia. She created this flavor that's smoky Chev. I think it's called like the Smoky Mama Portland Creamery. So I do it on a Grand Central, which is our local bakery, wheat flatbread, and then prosciutto, and then arugula, and then did I miss and then Kelly's, which one do I do? No, this is the new one with their hot honey. Okay. So Kelly's jelly has just come out. It's known for its spicy jellies, but they have just come out with habanero honey that is absolutely delicious. That is so floral and beautiful. You can taste it. So that's drizzled on top of the arugula, and then a dusting of sea salt. And this bite is awesome. And I couldn't stop talking about it. And I was telling the New Seasons people about it all the time. And finally they were just like, okay, why don't we just make this at the Best of Oregon event, and that'll be the bite. So that is my current crush. I cannot stop talking about it. I'm super stoked. And we have it at least once every other week in our house.
Well, I'm excited to try this in a month.
You can try it now. Well, maybe you can't get the honey. You could get a hot honey up there. You could do an approximation.
Yes. Well, it'll be best when it's all of those components together. So, I mean, the next question kind of goes along with that last one, but just like favorite cheese pairing. But that could be just across the board. What is your favorite cheese pairing? What do you like to usually eat with your cheese or have with your cheese?
Well, fresh berries are happening right now. I love just like a fromage blanc with strawberries and raspberries and blueberries. Like if it's a honey apricot, like Face Rock does an apricot honey fromage blanc with some fresh berries, maybe a little drizzle of the habanero honey, something like that. That does it for me. Or like peaches. Right now, we're just starting to get peaches like that with a fromage blanc or a fresh Chev.
Berry season in the Pacific Northwest is just, there's nothing else quite like it.
Nothing like it.
That was my first job when I was like 6 years old, going out to the strawberry fields, picking strawberries for $1 a flat. I didn't make much
Wow.
money. I did not make
No.
much money, like $1 a day, because I was too busy eating them all.
I was going to say, but there are good fringe benefits to that
Yes,
stuff.
exactly. Exactly. Okay, last one. Your top food memory, just something that just really sticks with you as like an experience or something in particular that you had.
Well, I mentioned that I'm a Francophile and had spent some time in France. While I was over there, my mom came over to visit, and she wanted to go to a very fancy restaurant. So we went to a restaurant outside of Paris called Boyer Le Crere. It's kind of like a B&B, but they've got the Michelin 3-star restaurant on site. It's the only Michelin 3-star I've ever been to this day. And they did a foie gras prepared 3 ways on one dish. And it like opened my eyes to, I don't know, fine dining specialty, and just was incredible. So there's like a seared, a mousse. No, I can't even remember what the third one was. Maybe just in its kind of pure sliced form, and with different accompaniments. And, I love foie gras. It melts like butter. It's like meat butter. It's so good. And it's good with salty. It's good with something sweet. I could get one of those little jars and like almost just eat it with a spoon out of there.
Well, and then I'm sure like, having your mom there too, and like that first experience of like super fine dining. I've never been to a Michelin starred restaurant, so I haven't done that yet, but eventually one of these days. Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing.
That was a long time ago and not since. So, maybe it'll be a once in a lifetime, who knows, but it has stuck with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for joining me. And I'm really excited to celebrate cheese in Oregon next month at ACS.
I can't wait. This is a very fun way to spend an hour.
Thank you, Katie, for finding new ways to champion our delicious products and the makers behind them. I can't wait to share our bounty with those in attendance at the ACS conference. This podcast is recorded, produced, and edited by me, Shanae Muha. Thank you to Ben Muha for allowing me to use your music. Follow along on my cheesy adventures at Instagram, Facebook, or get more content at Patreon. My website is also a great hub for all of my goings-on. Thanks for listening, and remember, keep spreading the word of good curd.